I would not blame you if you've never heard of the productivity puzzle. Economists and policymakers are trying to fix this problem for almost 2 decades now, and is the reason why the country is witnessing GDP decline, human capital flight, overregulation, political tension, low investment, high inflation, relatively high unemployment, terrible wages, and so much more which can be traced back to this very issue. The actual problem is that productivity has stayed stagnant from 2008 to now, which has caused our quality of life, wages, and cost of living to decline and stagnate. Labour productivity is defined as how much output in terms of goods and services is produced per unit of input. Let's say we take a company from 2008 with about 10 workers. Let's say on average each worker produces 20 units per year, so that means at the end of the year the firm will have 200 units to sell. After selling all 200, the company is able to give pay rises and maybe even bonuses to those who worked hard. Let's take that same company, but now we're in 2024. Using the ONS statistics on productivity growth, the firm will be producing about 210 units per working year, given that the amount of workers stay the same. Including inflation, cost of living, tariffs, and the UK leaving the EU, the firm will now have to spend more on materials than ever before. The same firm has seen an increase of 55% in the cost of input. The reason behind this increase was due to a rise of 55% in labour, 50% increase in materials, 90% increase in energy, and a 50% increase in rent. Now the same company with the same amount of workers can no longer afford the higher wages and now can't even afford more workers, which has led to this current job market. As you may know, the current US job market is in a no fire, no hire situation, and the UK is in a similar spot. Well, sorta. The current labour market is heavily impacted by the productivity puzzle, as workers are demanding more pay for the same output, and employers are seeing more pressure to increase pay despite that hurdle. As a result, firms are not able to afford pay rises, and from that the ONS has seen a decrease in the amount of pay rises given to workers. Firms are also reducing the hiring, which has caused 1.7 million people to be currently unemployed, and for some reason has led job vacancies to fall to 718,000 from 863,000. On paper, however, if the amount of unemployment rises by X amount, job vacancies should also increase by a number similar to that, as firms, logically, would be trying to fill those empty positions. However, recent market trends have seen that firms are less willing to hire people to replace those roles. How productivity links to jobs is apparent. No employers are looking to hire sub-productive people, and I don't blame them. The productivity of a worker now and in 2010 are the exact same. The only difference is that workers in 2025 are much more expensive, which makes them reluctant to hire, which is shown as the job market is currently cooling down with hires as firms don't urgently need to fill empty positions. The unit labour cost in 2025, which means how much does a firm pay a worker for 1 unit of output, is 2 to 3 times more than it was in 2005. So corporations are currently paying more for less, which has further worsened the trends that we see today with bad wages, lower quality of life due to bad wages, and less employment in the economy. And this problem only happens in the UK. Out of all the G7 countries, the UK has the lowest productivity growth, and all the other counterparts in the G7 such as Germany, France, and the US all beat out the UK in productivity by a massive margin, and the only other country which has similar issues is Canada. But despite the lower productivity and lower employment, inflation is still rising at a very high rate. On paper, this doesn't really make sense. If you have low employment, you'll have low inflation, relatively. Furthermore, if productivity is stagnant, then firms won't have disposable income to put back into the economy, which again doesn't increase inflation. So why is inflation rising? Well, actually, that is also explained by the productivity puzzle, but not fully. Inflation currently sits at 3.8% as of September 2025 and is on a current upwards trend. We can see that the unit labour cost has risen dramatically in the past 2 decades. In each subsequent year from 2022, unit labour costs increased 5.4%, 7.3%, 4.9%, and in the first quarter of 2025, 6.2%. As productivity has stagnated, an increase in unit labour cost will put pressure on firms to try and keep margins, which lead to higher prices and thus inflation. But this doesn't fully explain the current inflation trends, as there's one other reason why inflation is rising, and that is due to the Ukraine invasion. As much as the productivity puzzle being the largest issue facing the UK, the Ukraine invasion has also impacted the cost of living, quality of life, and inflation as well. To put it simply, Ukraine exported many natural gases and other goods, which are now causing the energy sector and other aspects of the UK to rise in price as the supply of these goods have decreased. Hopefully, the UK government will see the productivity puzzle and implement measures to help increase productivity, as this has to be the largest issue we are facing in the country.